Welcome to our next CEO series, If I Knew Then Leadership Lessons, with Eric Yuan, the founder and CEO of Zoom. I'm Jason Nazar. I'm incredibly excited to have you all here with us today and to have Eric with us. Hey, Eric, thank you for your time today. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And I've been looking forward to this conversation for so long. You are an incredible leader that I've looked up to for many years, and that so many of us live on your platform, and you've changed our lives. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, this is a show that we do in partnership with Comparably and Entrepreneur.com. It's a CEO series where we have If I Knew Then conversations about different leadership lessons. And I'm Jason Nazar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Comparably. We're an employee review platform and help companies with their employer brand. I'm a serial entrepreneur, so this is the fourth company I've started. Before this, I had a company I sold to Intuit. And we've had this incredible list of guests on our show here with us. And at the very top of that list, Eric, is you. Certainly being Time Business Person of the Year, being at the forefront of changing the way that everyone in the world is working and interacting in their personal lives. And so it's incredible to see what you've built. And obviously all of us, and so many of us, are here on Zoom, all throughout the day and all throughout the week. So I think everyone's going to know it intimately. That said, in your own words, how do you describe Zoom today?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Zoom is just a video-centric communication tool to help people stay connected.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Very simple. I love it. I can say you've definitely win the prize for the most succinct answer about your business. I love that. All right. So as you have this incredible story to me, and a lot of folks, I'm a big comic book fan, so I love origin stories. And what is so rare is that somebody that was having as much success as you were in a corporate environment, right? So one of the early engineers on different platforms, going to Cisco from Webex, to not only have the idea and the vision for what you want to build, but to actually make that leap. I want to rewind to 2010 and 2011 and give us a window into your mind of how you were thinking and feeling, and why you felt like, hey, I've got to bring this new platform to life that should and could be better than all these other well-established video platforms.
Yeah, Jason, I live in Silicon Valley since 1997 after I joined Webex. I call Silicon Valley Startup Valley. That's the worldwide, the best innovation place. I knew someday I'm going to start my own company. I just do not know when and how. So back in the 2010, 2011 timeframe, I was not thinking about leaving Cisco or Cisco Webex, because I thought, I was a regional part of the Webex team, and I'd like to grow that business to $1 billion revenue, and then I'm going to do something else. However, during that process, unfortunately, looking back, unfortunately, I was not happy. Every morning, not like today, when I wake up, I did not want to go to office. The reason was very simple. Every time when I talked with a customer back then, I did not see a single happy customer. I was extremely, frustrated. So it took me almost a year. I failed to convince other people to build a new solution from the ground up. So finally, I told myself, that's fine. Maybe I should leave, to start something from the scratch. So that's why I started a Zoom. It's very just also is I would say it's not a very well planned, because it's just because of the every day I do not feel happy.
Part of, to me, what's so unique is how it just didn't follow the typical pattern. I remember I started a venture-backed company when I was 26, and I felt old at the time. In some ways in Silicon Valley, it's a young person's game. And better than anybody, a lot of people get to a point in life where they've had success in their career and in corporate jobs, and you have these golden handcuffs. It's very hard to leave and go do anything else. what gave you that motivation and drive to take that leap when so many other people didn't?
So Jason, you are so right. I think your path, your entrepreneurial path, I would say it's much better because when you started your first company when you were 26, I think that's the best. When I started the company, I was already 41 years old. You're so right. Cisco is a great company. I was corporate vice president there. They paid me very well, and the family. And when I thought about leaving, I do not think anyone around me would say, yes, go, to pursue your dream, to do that. That's not the case. That's one of the reasons maybe I'm too old, to get any funding, from most of the VCs, right? So, but the reason why I told myself, every morning, I ask myself, if I do not do that now, maybe in 10 years, in 15 years, I even do not have energy anymore, right? That's why every day when I do not feel happy, at the same time, I ask myself, what's my dream? What's my dream? I realize I can't wait anymore. So that's why I started. I do not think that's a motivation, just feel like you have to do something, just something on top of my mind every day. And for a while, then I decided, okay, it's time to leave, to start something.
Yeah. What was it like early on for you? Because I read a lot how, you felt like you didn't have the same network and connections of a lot of other folks. Today, a lot of multiple time entrepreneurs can raise money just on a team and an idea. It wasn't as if you got access to a bunch of capital. So what were those first 2 years like? And what did you have to go through to convince investors that this was going to be a big, massive business? And how did you overcome those challenges of not having that network of investors already?
So the good news, I do have, many friends, who really wanted to support me. But originally, I'd like to, probably take money from some VCs because all those are my friends, right? And on the one hand, it's good, get your friends the support. On the other hand, you also feel like, even higher pressure, right? And because I told my friend later on, I said, if the company did not do well, I will return the money, make sure, you guys will be, are going to be okay. So my original idea to get the funding from VCs, but no VCs would like to invest in me back then. So the good news, I got a 3 million seed funding from all 3 million funding from my friends. That's how it started. Yeah. I also sent them an email after you transfer the money. I think first of all, I do all I can to work as hard as I can to give you a 10x return. And also for some big investors, I also told them, and I do have money in the bank in case company did not do well. I will return the money, to make sure my own money is returned to you, because those are friends, right? You cannot let your friends down. So.
Yeah, I think many folks don't know how much pressure comes from actually taking money from folks that are your friends or your family, and how much more committed everybody is to it. How long did it take from that initial infusion of $3 million of capital to get your next proper, venture round in the door?
Our A round mainly also driven by those friends, and plus Jerry Young, right? It's his venture, and the Qualcomm ventures as well. They joined our Series A. I think probably 2.5 years we got the Series B, and yeah. So the seed round and A round, backed by my friends, plus Qualcomm venture and Jerry Young's VC.
All right, so let's go back even further, and as you were growing up, there was an interview I read how you really looked up to Bill Gates and got a chance to hear him speak, and you thought to yourself, like, that's what I want to be doing. That's where I want to be. Where did the motivation for you? And then there's this other incredible thing I read that I think it took you 9 tries to get a visa to get in the United States. Like, where did that internal motivation and drive come from an early age to want to get to the US, to want to start a company? Like, was that something that was instilled with your family, or did you feel like that was just part of, your vision for your life from an early stage?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Here's the story. I traveled to Japan in 1995. I lived there for around 4 months. I think I joined, I think it's probably, one of the industry show, right? And the Bill Gates, he was there to give a keynote speech, I think, about the internet, the future of, the industry revolution. And he talked about internet. I was so inspired by his speech. I realized at that time, wow, internet is going to change everything.
Mhm.
I better embrace it as early as possible. And that's why after I went back to China, and I told my wife, I say, I should figure out a way to go to US, to go to Silicon Valley, to take a look, to sort of join the first wave of internet revolution. And that's my plan. But the plan, is I thought about it very well, but I got declined when I applied for visa. And the good news, I did not give up. Looking back, it's more like, it's great. It's more like a practice of my perseverance, right? So, and finally, I got the visa after many times attempts. So, yeah.
So as you think about the thought process that folks go through before they start their own company, like what do you think is like the main question someone should ask themselves before they start a business, or the analysis that they should go through to figure out, if they should do it and what they should do?
Yeah, it's really quite. I think the way I look at this is, you think about it, you have a multiple options. You either join another startup company, maybe go back to school, maybe work for a bigger company with a great, position. If you think, if you do that, it's better than you start a company, I think don't start a company. If nothing is better than you start a company, just go forward. Meaning that's the only option. There's a best option, better than anything else. I think is just do it. Meaning you feel like I just cannot do anything else but to start a company. Only until then you start something. Otherwise, it's pretty tough. This is it's very tough journey. Not like everyone should start a company. I really do not think that's right.
Yeah. What were you least prepared for? You were 41 years old. You had all this professional success. You grew, from 0 to $800 million as, the head of the engineering team there. So by all accounts, you were incredibly successful and had learned all these things in your career. And now you put yourself in this completely other arena, which is a startup founder of one. Uh, what was the thing that you were least prepared for? And what was the biggest surprise for you in that first year or two as you made that transition from a super successful corporate executive to a startup founder?
I think the biggest surprise comes from how happy you feel you are, right? And I think almost every day, I just wanted to go to office. Every day is different. We see the product progress, we see the customer progress, we see the company progress. Every day that excitement as a big surprise. In terms of a least prepared thing, I would say it's more like how to quickly get more resources. I thought I can easily get a lot of people, right? Hire a lot of people before I start. I realized that's not the case because either funding or maybe you want to make sure get the product done right first, and then you hire the marketing sales step by step. My original thought was, oh, I can quickly have a team within 1 year. I think more like the patience. I think I was not prepared well, and before I start.
Yeah. One of the things that's so amazing to me is it is like the hardest thing to do in tech is to knock off established incumbents. And I remember watching Zoom come up, and there was WebEx, and obviously Skype, I mean, had the first position for so long, especially being part of Microsoft. There were companies like Blue Jeans. And I mean, as a product person, you can see like Zoom just made everything so easy. There weren't the heavy downloads. It just made the process frictionless, which I think people underestimate how critical it is in a user experience product, just getting rid of friction. What do you feel like was the magic of what you created early on that helped you leapfrog WebEx and BlueJeans and Skype and even Hangouts?
So Jason, that's a wonderful question. That's also the key reason why almost every VC do not like to fund this new venture, because you're so right. You look at the competitive landscape, there's so many competitors there, even free. How can you compete against them? The good news, I did not look at it from a competitor's perspective, because I look at it from an end user perspective. Because I did spend time on talking with a lot of customers, ask them which solution you are using. Do you like it? Do you feel happy? I did not see a single happy user told me that, yes, I really like that solution. I really like that solution. I do not want to switch. That's not the case. Then I realized I might have a chance if I build something better than solutions out there. So that's I dare to start. Otherwise, if you always look at the competitor's product, especially have a huge, very successful big, I think you do not dare to start something. Don't look at it from competitor's perspective. Always laser focus on customer.
Yeah. So I have this thesis that in the long run, the best products win. But in the short run, sometimes it's the best marketed products that break out, right? Over a long period of time, people will always find the best product like Zoom. Your background wasn't as a marketer. You're an engineer. You're obsessively focused, as you can tell, on what builds a great user experience. So you're building this product in 2011 and 2012. How do you market it? How did you get it out there? How did you build the initial demand?
So Jason,
as a non-marketer.
you're so right. We are not a good marketer for sure. You may not know, I can share with you the first thing we did in terms of marketing, program is one of our early focus. And we printed sort of, what's a Zoom? And it's printed on the paper. And I think we pasted it on in the Stanford campus in the bulletin board. Try to get some users there. I think that's the first of our marketing. So overall, I think we learned along the way. Hey, the best marketing vehicle is to leverage our end users. Make your first pay, he or she is going to share with their network. You get a second user, a third, and a fourth. And the word of mouth is the best marketing program. That's what we learned, along the way.
Yeah. To me, it was so clear. I mean, the magic of Zoom early on was just that there was nothing to download. The quality was so good. The feature set. I always wonder, like, why did it take everyone else so long? And even today, like, who wants to have to download an application before they can just do, a meeting? Like, was that for you just something that was so obvious early on? It's like, hey, this needs to be the user experience for everybody.
You're right. It's because, as I mentioned, we even did not have a marketing team until 2015. We did it on purpose. We would like to leverage the customers. Every day we talk to the customer. Every day I spend a lot of time on talking with the customers to get their feedback. Why they like Zoom? Why they do not like Zoom? What we can do differently? I did spend a lot of time. Even for those the paid subscribers who canceled our service for us back in a month. I do spend time, sometimes 1 or 2 hours talking to them. Why did you cancel our service? We learn a lot. And then the customer told us why we should focus on the joint meeting experience, why the audio quality is even better than video quality. A lot of things we learned from those early adopters.
Yeah. I always think that being motivated by fear is actually very powerful. My father is was a first generation immigrant to the United States. I very much grew up with that immigrant mentality that, he was born in the Middle East in 1930. So his worldview is completely different. And even though he had a lot of success by all measures, he always had that kind of depression mentality that everything could go away at any time. And so I always think, like, what could go wrong? What isn't working? How is someone potentially going to catch up and beat us? And I'm sure you must have a little bit of that too, right? I can even hear it in how you talk about taking in that early, capital from your network and friends and family. when did you first feel like, oh, this is going to work and this is going to be something big? You know, at what part did you really see that Zoom was going to be much more than, for your early investors, and good for them, but that this was going to be something that could really be massive and revolutionary, and if not envisioning the company that you've built today, certainly, something much bigger than what you originally thought it would be?
Yeah, first of all, Jason, I think your thought about the fear, I think is right on, because one of my favorite books is Andy, former Intel CEO Andy Gross, Only the Paranoid Survive, right? So we always thought about what can go wrong, and we should have a plan. So even today, I always every day I thought about that as well, right? I'm very paranoid. So I think for several years, and I think. The day when we, even before the product was fully ready, we got our first the check from our customer, even before the product was ready. At that time, I thought about that. Wow, if we keep doing that, we might get more and more checks from our customers. I think maybe we're onto something big. So so I think that's the first moment. Another moment is. When it's not just one day or one event. So we got a lot of emails from those customers who shared their great experience almost every day. And they told us how their Zoom experience changed their lives, on many fronts, the way they are using the Zoom. That's why at that time I feel like, wow, we can do so many things to really help the world, to help the people stay connected, to make sure they are very happy about using Zoom. Then I realized, even if from financial perspective, we are not very successful, at least we can make so many users feel very happy to use Zoom. That's why I told our team, guys, a lot of users count on us to stay connected. That's even bigger a dream than just for a good financial return. Yeah.
Did you ever imagine, and obviously none of us had a crystal ball to understand what this world would be like in the last year, but when you see the stories of, families that are disconnected, having Thanksgiving and holidays over Zoom, and, grandparents that are interacting with their grandchildren. I mean, obviously it's become so vital for work, but in a COVID world, Zoom is what has kept us all connected, and people are doing their weddings over Zoom. What's that like for you as the inventor and founder of the company, to know that your product is so intimately touching and connecting people in their daily lives?
Yeah. So on the one hand, I think everyone at Zoom, we felt very excited how to leverage this opportunity, to have the people stay connected. On the other hand, huge pressure, because you have more responsibility. Not all customers, that was beautiful, right, for Zoom, but even for the K-12 schools, they also started using Zoom. We offered free access to more than 125,000 K-12 schools. That's a huge responsibility. What if it did not manage well and the product does not work in the middle of the class? That's huge impact for our kids, right? That's why I think all of us at Zoom, we worked extremely hard, day and night, make sure at the capacity here and there, listen to our customer feedback, and do all we can. We feel like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to help the world. We really cannot let our users down. I think that responsibility is just very, very high. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I want to do the time machine question. And so let's take a time machine back into your 20s. If you could take a time machine into your 20s and you could meet that version of Eric, and you could give yourself any piece of advice, what would it be and why?
I hope I have a time machine I can go back. So, but anyway, if I was 20 or 25, I would say to have a dream is very important, right? So if you do not have a dream, that's okay, but always think about when you should have a dream. Because at that time, I sort of just enjoyed my life. I had no idea what I should do. What's my dream? I have no idea. So always think about what's your dream next, and that's very important. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So same thing into your 30s or 40s. If you take that time machine into your 30s or into your 40s, what professional or personal advice are you giving yourself and why?
Start a company or join company, and much better, and you can learn way more than working for a bigger company.
Yeah. What do you feel has been obviously you managed really large teams, at Webex and at Cisco, you grew that engineering, team by hundreds. Today, I think you have thousands of global employees. You must be growing at an unbelievably fast pace as we see. Now that you're responsible for so many more folks, how is your management philosophy evolved and changed from being a leader of engineering talent to being a founder, CEO, and leader of your entire organization?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So when I was a vice president of engineering back to Webex days or back to the Cisco time, I think every day I just thought about how to deliver a better product. Like manage engineers is relatively straightforward, just product engineers. But to be a founder or CEO, it's different. You got to manage almost every part of the business, to some extent when you started, right? And you got to be very, very hands-on. I think one thing is, when I manage an engineer team, I just told them my management philosophy. I work as hard as you can, really care the customer, a lot of things, but never thought about writing down the principle. But when I started Zoom, it's different. I wanted to know what kind of company I wanted to work for. What's the company culture? What's the company value? I had to write down those business principles and then cascade it down to the whole team. Every day talk about that. That's very important, to run a company rather than just managing a team.
Yeah. Let's dive into company culture a little bit. Obviously, this is why, I started Comparably to help companies build better cultures, to have more transparency into what's really going on in an organization. I would say, when a company is as successful as Zoom is now, the most talked about company globally, right? One of the hottest companies you could ever imagine. People feel great, and it's going to build naturally, I think, in many ways, a fantastic culture. But what did you do early on? I mean, obviously, your enthusiasm for the business and for the product and the customers is infectious. Like, that's clear to see. But when you were 10 folks, 50 folks, 200 folks, 500 folks, before you broke out as the hottest company, how did you think about building a great company culture then? And what do you feel like were the things that you did differently? Like, you must have, when I have a chance to build my own company culture, it's going to be so different than Cisco, and Webex in these ways. How did you build that great company culture early on?
Yeah. By the way, Cisco is a great company. Don't get me wrong. I did learn a lot when I was there. I think every company is different. Let's put it this way, right? Every company, the culture also is different. So back to early days of Zoom, I just told myself, first of all, we got to write down the definition of Zoom's culture. Plus, I want to make sure everyone they can remember that. Got to be very catchy. Cannot be too many things, right? At the most 2 or 3 words to describe your company culture. In terms of our culture, is very simple, just the 2 words: deliver happiness. That's it. So meaning, for me, as the CEO of the company, my number 1 priority is to think about our employees, make sure they feel happy. And together as a business, we make sure the customer happy. That's a very simple formula. So every day we talk about that. My top priority as a CEO, not about the customer or the product, it's about employees. And together we make a customer happy. So every day we talk about that, we lead by, and when we hire employees, we share with them as well. Because especially when you are very small, it's relatively straightforward. Everybody understands that well. But now it's given that everyone is working from whole, have so many employees. It's not that strict anymore, because like used to be, we have in terms of our company culture, we have a happiness crew team. They get together, organize all kinds of events from bottom up. For now, it's really hard to organize those kind of very fun events. And yeah, we are still learning how to evolve our company culture. But the number one thing is you got to do that. Make sure everyone knows that, and then lead by example.
So you have this incredible team. We have the privilege again to work with them. You and I were chatting. Your head of people, Lynn, is absolutely amazing. She, told us the story of how you were recruiting her and how, she came to work at Zoom. What are the characteristics that you most look for in some, as you personally are recruiting a senior executive, or as you give the vision and the scorecard to all of your hiring managers? What are the 3 or 4 most important characteristics someone needs to have to be able to earn a spot on the Zoom team?
I think our hiring philosophy, from senior executives all the way down to the individual contributors, is to focus on 2 things. One is about self-learning. The second is about self-motivation. Because every company, every business is different. You really cannot leverage your past experience, to come to a company, say that you should do this way, you should do that way. That does not work. You gotta learn something by yourself. You really want to learn, right? That's the number one important thing. And number 2 is, you got to motivate yourself, because, startup is a long journey. Sometimes the ups and the downs. Quite often you see some employees, oh my God, you need some managers to help them, to motivate them. That does not work, right? You have a lot of other things to do, right? You cannot spend all the time every day to motivate your employees. They got to be self-motivated. So we look at those 2, I think, the characteristics when it comes to hiring the Zoom employees.
Yeah, I'm curious to know how you identify that. I mean, obviously, the interview process and job hiring is forever changed. It now happens through Zoom. It doesn't happen in person. And I think it's going to stay that way, indefinitely after COVID. I've always felt like the hiring process is very artificial. I'm sure everybody's much smarter than me, right? But after 20 years of doing this, I still don't know how to sit across a table from somebody and in 2 or 3 conversations know for sure if they're the right person that we should be working together for 5 years to come. I mean, think of the commitment that people make for hopefully a meaningful period of their life with so little information on each side, right? That's hopefully the value of a platform like Comparably. But how do you identify when someone has that self-motivation? What are the cues that tell you, oh, this person is going to be at that top level as a self-motivated individual?
Yes, so just first of all, you are always knew that. As no, always 50% of the time you're right in terms of hiring, right? And no matter what kind of practices you learn from others, always like that. However, one thing we did a little bit differently is we would like to hire those people with the potential. They may not have a great background, but they can grow themselves. How the company grows, meaning that's the position, that's a job description. The candidate we brought in, may not be qualified today for that position, but we see the potential. They would like to learn, they are self-motivated. But how could we know they would like to learn? Right? They are self-motivated, the people. So if I interview someone, I'd like to ask, hey, I know you're very busy, tell me which books you are reading recently. What did you learn from that? Who are your mentors? I want to see, do they really want to grow themselves or not? If someone told me that, I'm very busy, I did not get a chance to read a book for a long time, I do not think I have mentors, that's not a good sign, right? And plus, how do you come out of a downtime? When you feel depressed, how can you overcome that, right? So share with me those stories, right? By talking, share with those stories, you will learn from how they handle those sort of like the personal or professional priceless, right? Then you realize, do they really need other people help? Or they thought about that, and then finally they're okay. They want to become a better version of themselves, they learn from their own mistakes, they keep learning. That's kind of sort of our the interview process.
What are your go-to questions in an interview? I've got, the 2 or 3 questions that I always like to ask. What are the questions that you find yourself asking a lot in an interview process?
Jason, which book are you reading recently? What do you learn from that?
Yeah, I love that. And what are you hoping to discover in somebody's answer?
So I want someone to always they have their own ways to learn. Either say, yeah, this is a book someone recommended to me. This is what I learned. They can clearly articulate what they learned from that book, right? Or they can tell you they got a new mentor, right? And share those personal development stories. That's very important.
Yeah. So it's clear to see you are absolutely with the customer experience, as every successful founder is. Probably you to a level that's even more so than most folks, which is why you've had so much success. Talk to me a little bit about, like, if you had to create a set of best practices for happy customers, right? If you're on the board of a company that you invested in, what advice would you give for the practices that team needed to do to have happy customers? And how do you identify that, and how do you build that in your team so that they translate it out to all of your Zoom customers?
I think first of all, start from the company culture. Make sure the culture is about the customer, right? That's number one, right? And number two, how to measure that. You cannot talk about customer happy or not. Like take our business for example, like NPS score, right? It's also extremely important for us. Also, a lot of other things, meaning to solicit feedback from customers. Are those mechanisms to solicit feedback sustainable or not, right? You cannot always leverage your support team. They get phone calls, right? How to build those feedback mechanism from your product, right? We no matter the big, important, huge Fortune all the way down to the individual, the subscribers or sometimes free users, when they ask it to you, what's your response time, right? Meaning after a while, take maybe several months, you still do not respond. That does not work, right? So maybe someone posted a message in a Twitter, right? To say, hey, I got the problem to use a product. Who is going to help, right? Got to be on many fronts from every interaction to let the customer realize you as a very trusted business care about them, right? You got to build that, very solid foundation. Otherwise, I do not think just to do one thing, you can say, yes, we have a great customer culture. That's not like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you talked about, we talked about it being used in family situations. You brought up the example of how, so many students, globally are using Zoom. Are there examples of how people are using it today that you didn't even foresee? Like, what are the stories you hear of how people are using Zoom that, even surprise you, of how people are using it to connect together?
I think, yeah. So, last year, I think we did see, lots of brand new use cases like, Zoom marriage is legal in New York, right? And what you call the trial, right? It's also use Zoom as well. I think in terms of a brand new use cases, I would say is probably we're thinking about the down the road when we go back to office, when it comes to hybrid, workplace, what the new use case look like? That's what we're thinking, because it did not happen yet. So maybe in the summertime, after we all go back to office, some employees, they're working in the office, some employees, they work from home. What's the overall use case or user experience look like? That is something very interesting.
Yeah. I'm curious to get your take on the future of work. I'm bullish on Zoom. Full disclosure, I'm a stockholder. I never understand why. Well, I mean, I understand, but there'll be news that, COVID is getting better and the Zoom stock will go down and it's getting worse. And to me, it's just like the future of work has changed forever, and you just right yesterday or this week, Salesforce announced, they're moving away from in-person offices. And, Benioff comes out and says like the 9-to-5 job is dead. What's your crystal ball of what the future of work looks like? What's in 2 years from today? What's that hybrid experience going to be like? Obviously in tech, we're at the forefront of this and probably going to be, faster to change than a lot of other industries. But when you think about what's going to be fundamentally different about the work experience for folks in 2 years from today than what it was for the 2 decades before, what's that look like to you?
I think first of all, I do not think I have a crystal ball because, but one thing we know is we can learn from our customers, well, from our partners. Like take a Mark Benioff, he's right on. And we just saw that article, what the future hybrid workplace look like. A lot of other companies also talk about that. So our goal is to make sure, on the one hand, learn from others. On the other hand, we are very patient. We are not going to make a decision soon. So because the things are changing quickly. So overall, what we know is it's going to be hybrid. What do you mean the hybrid? So it's driven by employees, meaning employees, they can decide today I wanted to go to office, tomorrow I work from home, or driven by employees, meaning, hey, every employee, Monday to Wednesday, come to office, Thursday and Friday, you can go back to home. In all kinds of hybrid, definitions, right? So I think we wanted to learn from others' experience, but we wanted to take try first, learn from our own experience as well. Maybe for the first 7 months, 2 days or 3 days in office, 2 or 3 days at home, or maybe everyone working from home for a while, and then we look at the productivity, mental health, and finally, I think we're going to decide what's the best way. I do not think everyone will be the same though. The different business they could embrace a different hybrid working place.
And it's been incredibly exciting for me to see Zoom, as we all kind of predicted, open up as a platform, right? And the evolution of what you're doing and so many applications being built on Zoom. As you think about your business today, like, and fast forward a couple of years, like, what's your vision for Zoom? Because it's changing and evolving so quickly, and now as you become a platform and people interact with so many other applications on the Zoom platform, it's gonna naturally evolve the scope of what you do so much. Like, what are you most excited about, and what does the company look like to you 2 or 3 years out from today?
Yeah, so our vision is that we believe a video communication like Zoom can deliver a better experience than face-to-face meeting. So we're not there yet. Maybe take another 5 to 10 years. But in terms of 2 to 3 years out, I would say at least the one thing we know is, your is going to be, and much more fun. Not like today, we always talk about that with business communication. Zoom is going to become a platform company. So down the road, Jason, you and I use Zoom not because we want to have this, the chat. More like you and I want to play a game together. Mm-hmm. Right? One click, you and I play a game. Zoom more like a people interface. I see you and let's do something, right? I think how to transform our business to become platform company. And like after the call, and we leverage AI technology to generate a meeting summary, very accurate meeting summary. Mm-hmm. Or maybe go through like say you have a town hall meeting and we support the live translation. A lot of cool technologies can make your meeting experience better than today.
Yeah, it's a compliment to you all, right? So there's this idea that we all are spending so much time on screens that fatigue, right? And people call it Zoom fatigue because now people just associate online video meetings with Zoom. I mean, it's incredible how you've literally become the verb for all of online meetings. How do you think about it in the present, right? And especially people at home, like balancing, right? I think folks are spending more time on screens, and I think a lot of folks are missing that, in-person human interaction. Obviously, you're driven so much by this human component of happiness. How do you think about this balance of like the need of all of us to just be in each other's physical presence and touch and be around each other versus the efficiency and then there's so many other ways that we can connect and build connections because of the technology.
It's a great question. I did experience that as Zoom fatigue, but I think based on all those tips we learned from others or learned from ourselves, I think I did not have that Zoom fatigue anymore. The reason why is, you got to do proactively take a break. Used to be last April or May, a peak day, I had a total of 19 Zoom meetings. Look at my calendar, back-to-back meetings. It's just crazy. Later on, I realized no need to do that. No need to schedule back-to-back meetings. Also, proactively take a break. And plus, if you schedule a 1 hour meeting, you schedule maybe 1 hour meeting ended 10 minutes earlier. Every time you ended the meeting earlier, you feel very happy. Before the meeting is over, share some happy stories. Sometimes you just turn off the video. And you just schedule a call with your friends, with your high school classmate, talk about something else, right? Learn a cooking class. Then you do not have a Zoom fatigue anymore, right? So that's why you got to adapt to that proactively. So for now, I really do not have any Zoom fatigue anymore.
Yeah, I want to dive into those examples you gave of what people can do, and we do. I want to show your company culture again. I mean, you just have an incredible company culture, like amazing scores by your diverse employees, by the women on your team. Like it's clear to see everything you're doing on the culture side is just working. What are some of the little tricks or things that you all do? So for example, at Comparably, we have a Monday morning stand up and we have people share their weekends and we give prizes for whoever had the best weekend because we want to celebrate work-life balance. And we do stretching and physical exercises together on Zoom. What are some of the things that you and your team do, over Zoom with each other to feel connected and make it more of like that personal experience?
Yes, it's a great question. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a happiness crew team. A lot of ideas, came from from the bottom up. They organize all kinds of events, like, look at our female employees, they organize event, invest some guest speakers and diversity group. They also invite other guest speakers. All those events, if they organized by themselves, we do sponsor them very well. Because anything, comes from our employees. We have, once every 2 weeks, we have all hands meetings. And we allow our employees, they submit any questions anonymously, any questions, that's fine. And we are going to address that either live or have a written answers to those questions. Again, a lot of ideas not driven from top down, from bottom up. As long as we embrace those ideas. Like take this month, for example, right? So, and we got to invite the guest speakers, talk about Black history, a lot of other things, a lot of initiatives. All those ideas, came from our employees. And those are best ideas. I think for me as a CEO, I will embrace all those great ideas. Then I feel that will be okay. Because if you do that, your employees, they will have much better ideas than your management team. So just embrace that. Yeah.
So you said you do your all hands every 2 weeks? Is that right?
Yeah. Once every 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do on those meetings? How do you run them? I think so many of us are trying to, like, for example, I've always run in-person companies. This is the first time I'm running a distributed company. Now, because how the world changed and because of the power of Zoom, we're hiring people, globally, and, we're going to have a fully distributed office even post-COVID. So I'm always trying to understand the best practices of other organizations. What do you do in your all hands meetings to build connection? Like, what's a typical all hands meeting for Zoom? How is that structured?
Yeah, normally we give the business update to our employees, and also some of our executives also share some topics that really matter recently, and some update like that. And also we also going to answer to some employee questions as well. And quite often we also invited a guest speaker. But based on the employee feedback, sometimes you squeeze all those kind of things together, within 1 hour, we do not have enough time to talk about those employee questions. That's why just recently we split that into 2 meetings. When we invited a guest speaker, we make it a separate meeting. All hands meeting, just all hands meeting. Those guest speaker, conversations are very helpful, right? Learn from other leaders. And recently we invited ServiceNow CEO Bill, and last year, the Nike CEO or HP CEO. I know they all helped us a lot, right? To share their leadership lessons and their advice for us. And yeah, overall, it's also we collect the feedback from our employees. What we can do differently? Are there any other topics we should address, during the all hands meeting?
All right, so a couple more questions before we wrap up. And thank you again so much for your time today. What do you feel like are the big mistakes you've made in your career, or how do you feel like you've evolved to become a better version of yourself as a leader? Obviously, the person you are today, Eric, is a meaningfully better leader than even who you were 5 or 10 years ago, right? And so as you look back, what are the things that you identify that you wish you knew about how you could have been an even better leader, earlier on in your career?
Yeah, so I made a tons of mistakes, right? So I think the different time, I think I learned different things. If you ask me overall, I think when I started after I graduated until today, the number one lessons I learned is that you have to figure out a way to know what's your dream. That's really important. And because otherwise, you sometimes I know that I just wasted a lot of time when I was young. I spent the whole night, play the games with other friends. I do not know what I was doing. Looking back, the reason why I did not have a dream, I just enjoyed doing that back then. There's nothing wrong about that. But when you get older, look back, you realize, wow, you can learn so many things. You can prepare well for today's journey, but you did not do that. So that's why to have a dream early on, that's the most important thing. That's probably the number one mistakes I made.
Yeah.
Number two is about you got to think about every day, think about how to become a better version of yourself. I always think about that. If you early on start to think about that, you are going to have a lot of mentors early on. You are going to read a lot of business books, right? You are going to do, listen to a lot of great podcasts as well, right? That's probably the second mistake I made. I did not know that until very late. So that's the second mistake. Last but not least, also extremely important, and maybe just my personal thing is, early on I did think about the purpose of life. I just did not have a good answer. So every time when I thought about it, what's the purpose of life, I thought very hard. I had no answer, and I stopped. And I thought about it again, no answer. I stopped. Until a day I realized the purpose of life is to pursue a sustainable happiness, and the sustainable happiness comes from making others happy. After that day, that completely changed my life. It's a very different journey afterwards, but I did not know that until very late. So
Yeah, that's amazing. What are you most excited about for the future of Zoom as you today dream and you think of, the business that you're going to continue to build over the next decade? What gives you the most energy? What gets you the most excited? And what are you most passionate about that you're going to build for the future look like?
I think the future of video communication is bright. Literally, I think we just started. As I mentioned earlier, the video communication can deliver a better experience than face-to-face meeting in the future. So meaning a lot of technologies will be embedded and built into the product like Zoom. And we're not there yet. So how to have more people stay connected? Imagine a world, any two person, no matter where they live, they can talk to each other. They feel like in the same conference room. They can give each other a hug. Right? The world is in a much better place. Any two person, they can truly understand each other. Right? That's a great dream. I think that's the future.
That's amazing. Well, you've helped shape the future already for so many of us. And I got to say, obviously, I spend hours and hours a day on Zoom. It's so integral to so many of our professional life and our personal life. And the world changed a lot this last year and a half. And Zoom has been a massive part of helping people be more successful professionally and personally. You know, it's always been so impressive, Eric, to watch from a distance what you've done with the company. Um, and I always marveled at the company culture you built, because we see these scores come in from your employees all the time in the reviews. And I think there's a part of you that wonders, like, oh, are people really happy being at just this amazingly fast growing company? And it's clear to see that, like, the way that you talk about purpose and dreams and happiness, it's infectious. You know, and I can't imagine that there's anybody on your team that doesn't feel inspired, not just for what Zoom stands for as a business, but for being be able to part of your team and getting to see your journey. And again, I think, to me, what is so inspiring is that, like, the lesson that I take from you is that it's never too late to pursue your dream. You know, this isn't just for folks that are starting off. Like, you can be at the midway point of your career. And if you have a dream and if you have a passion, you know, and just to hear how happy you were a year or two, when I'm sure things were really difficult and hard, you know, but how happy you were building this and seeing the progress and getting to hear what customers were saying. That's what's so unique and special. And thank you so much for sharing your story today, because it's so important. And there's so many of us that are rooting you on for more and more success, and so excited to see where you're going to continue to go in the future.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Of course. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're going to have more incredible guests like Eric. And so be well, pursue your dreams. And I think all of us feel quite a bit more inspired because of what you shared today, Eric. So thank you, and see you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason.